Oh, Muhammad, it was terrifying.
Don't you worry now. It's all over.
You were so brave. Thank you.
It's what I do. For people like you.
December 11th, 1981. The Bahamas. Muhammad Ali, now 39 years old, was fighting what everyone suspected might be his final bout against Trevor Berbick. In the front row sat his 9-year-old daughter Laila, watching her father step into the ring for what would become the most heartbreaking night in boxing history. What happened in the 10th round, when Ali saw his daughter's tears, would force him to make a choice between the sport he loved and the child he loved more. The decision he made in that moment didn't just end the fight, it ended one of the greatest careers in sports history and revealed the true meaning of strength. This is the story of how a little girl's tears saved her father's life and taught the world that sometimes the greatest victory comes from knowing when to stop fighting. If stories about love conquering everything, even our greatest passions, move you, subscribe for more incredible moments that prove the most important battles are often fought outside the ring. By December 1981, Muhammad Ali should have stopped boxing years ago. His reflexes had slowed, his voice had begun to slur from years of punishment, and his legendary speed was now just a memory. Those closest to him had been begging him to retire for months. His wife Veronica had pleaded with him after watching him struggle against Larry Holmes the year before. His doctor had warned him about the cumulative effects of head trauma. Even his mother, Odessa, had called from Louisville, crying, asking her son to stop letting people hit you. But Ali was a fighter in every sense of the word, and the idea of walking away from the sport that had defined his life was unbearable. Boxing wasn't just his career. It was his identity, his art, his connection to greatness. Without the ring, who was Muhammad Ali? The financial pressures didn't help. Despite earning millions throughout his career, Ali's generosity and poor financial management had left him needing money. The Berbick fight guaranteed him $1.2 million, money his family desperately needed. It seemed like a perfect solution. One more fight, one more payday, and then he could retire on his own terms. The fight against Trevor Berbick was supposed to be different. It was billed as drama in the Bahamas, a final payday in a tropical setting that would allow Ali to go out with dignity. The location was chosen specifically to avoid the boxing commissions in Nevada and New York, who had grown increasingly reluctant to license Ali due to his age and condition. At 27 years old, Berbick was in his prime. But he was also respectful of Ali's legacy and had promised to give the aging champion a competitive but not destructive fight. In the weeks leading up to the bout, Ali had trained differently than he had in years. Instead of the intense, punishing camp routines of his prime, he focused more on spending time with his children. He would take Laila to the gym with him, letting her sit in the corner while he worked the heavy bag, explaining to her what he was doing and why. "Daddy, why do you like getting hit?" she had asked one afternoon, watching him spar with a young fighter who was clearly holding back. "I don't like getting hit, baby girl," Ali had laughed. "Nobody likes getting hit. But sometimes you have to get hit to show people that you can't be broken. Sometimes you have to prove you're strong. But you're already strong, Daddy. Everyone knows you're strong." The innocence of her observation had stopped him cold. Out of the mouths of babes, Laila Ali had begged her father to let her watch this fight. At 9 years old, she was old enough to understand that her father was famous, but not old enough to fully comprehend why people wanted to hurt him for entertainment. Muhammad had always been protective of his children, rarely allowing them to see him fight because he understood that watching your father get hit was traumatic for a child. But Laila was persistent. "Daddy, I want to see why everyone says you're the greatest. I want to understand what you do." Against his better judgment, and perhaps sensing this might be his last opportunity to share this part of his life with his daughter, Ali agreed. "But if you get scared, you tell Uncle Angelo and he'll take you out, okay?" Laila nodded solemnly. "I won't get scared, Daddy. You're Muhammad Ali. You don't lose." The innocence in her voice broke his heart. The fight began poorly for Ali. His legs, once described as dancing, now moved like he was walking through mud. His famous jab, once lightning fast, now telegraphed its arrival. Berbick, to his credit, was fighting respectfully, hard enough to win, but not with the killer instinct that could have ended things quickly and brutally. For 9 rounds, Ali absorbed punishment. He was losing every round, but he kept fighting with the heart that had carried him through 3 decades in the ring. In the corner between rounds, Angelo Dundee wiped blood from Ali's mouth and tried to convince him to quit. "Champ, you've got nothing left to prove. Let me stop this." "No," Ali gasped. "One more round, I can still do this." But Ali couldn't still do it, and everyone in the Nassau Coliseum knew it except the man taking the punishment. In the 10th round, Berbick caught Ali with a clean right hand that snapped his head back and sent him staggering into the ropes. For a moment, Ali's legs gave out completely, and only the ropes kept him upright. The crowd gasped, afraid they were about to witness something terrible. That's when Ali's eyes found the front row. That's when he saw his daughter. Laila was crying. Not the gentle tears of sadness, but the desperate, terrified sobs of a child watching her hero being destroyed. Her small hands were pressed against the sides of her face, and her mouth was open in a silent scream of anguish. Next to her, Veronica was trying to comfort her, but Laila was inconsolable.
"Daddy, stop! Please stop!"
Ali could hear her voice cutting through the noise of the crowd.
"I don't want to watch anymore."
The sound of his daughter's pleading voice hit Ali like a physical blow. In that moment, time seemed to slow down. He could see Berbick approaching for another attack, could hear Angelo Dundee screaming instructions from the corner, could feel the familiar buzz of adrenaline that had carried him through so many fights. But none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was the look of terror on his little girl's face. In that moment, Muhammad Ali saw himself through his daughter's eyes. Not as the greatest boxer who ever lived, not as a three-time heavyweight champion, not as a cultural icon who had transcended sports. He saw himself as a father who was scaring his child, who was showing her violence and calling it greatness, who was prioritizing his own stubborn pride over her emotional well-being. The revelation hit him harder than any punch Berbick had thrown. All those years of saying he fought for his people, for his principles, for his legacy, but he had forgotten the most important people of all, his own children. Ali remembered something his father, Cassius Sar, had told him years ago. "Son, there comes a time when a man has to choose between what the world expects of him and what his heart knows is right. That's when you find out what kind of man you really are." Ali had always said he fought for his people, for his principles, for his legacy. But looking at Layla's tear-stained face, he realized he had forgotten the most important reason to fight, to protect the people you love. And sometimes protecting them meant knowing when to stop. In the middle of the 10th round, with Berbick advancing to continue his attack, Muhammad Ali did something that shocked everyone in the arena. He walked to the center of the ring, looked directly at the referee, and said 5 words that would end his career. "I don't want to fight." The referee, confused, asked Ali to repeat himself. "I said I don't want to fight anymore. Stop the fight, I'm done." The referee had never encountered this situation before. Ali wasn't knocked out, wasn't seriously injured by boxing standards, wasn't in immediate physical danger. But he was asking to have the fight stopped. "Are you sure, Muhammad?" the referee asked. Ali looked once more at his daughter, who was still crying, and nodded. "I'm sure, it's over." The referee reluctantly stopped the fight, declaring Berbick the winner by TKO. But nobody in the arena was thinking about who won or lost. They were processing what they had just witnessed. The greatest boxer in history voluntarily ending not just a fight, but his entire career because he couldn't bear to make his daughter cry. The silence in the Nassau Coliseum was deafening. Then, slowly, something unprecedented happened. The crowd began to applaud, not the usual roar of excitement after a fight, but a respectful, emotional acknowledgement of what they had witnessed. These weren't cheers for a winner or boos for a loser. This was a standing ovation for a man who had just shown them what true courage looked like. Even Trevor Berbick, who should have been celebrating his victory over the legendary Muhammad Ali, stood in the opposite corner with tears in his eyes. Later, he would tell reporters, "I didn't want to win like that. I wanted to beat Muhammad Ali the fighter, not watch Muhammad Ali the father break his own heart." What he did took more courage than anything I've ever seen in a boxing ring. Ali immediately went to his corner, grabbed a towel, and climbed through the ropes. He walked straight to where Laila was sitting, pushed through the crowd of officials and photographers, and knelt down in front of her. Security tried to stop him, but one look from Ali made them step aside. "I'm sorry, baby girl," he said, pulling her into his arms. "Daddy's done fighting, I promise." Laila buried her face in his chest, her small body shaking with sobs. "I don't want them to hurt you anymore, Daddy. Please don't let them hurt you anymore. They won't. Ali whispered, his own eyes filling with tears. They can't hurt me anymore because I'm not going to fight anymore. Daddy's hanging up his gloves. Around them, photographers were capturing every moment, but Ali didn't care about the cameras for once in his life. All that mattered was the little girl in his arms and the promise he had just made to her. Veronica joined them, wrapping her arms around both her husband and daughter. Are you sure about this? She whispered to Ali. Ali looked at her with more certainty than he had felt about anything in years. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The crowd had gone silent, realizing they were witnessing something unprecedented in sports history. Here was a man who had never backed down from anything. Not the government, not the Nation of Islam, not the most dangerous fighters in the world, surrendering because he couldn't stand to see his child in pain. In the dressing room afterward, reporters clamored for an explanation. Why had Ali stopped fighting? Was he injured? What had happened? Ali sat with Laila on his lap, both of them calmer now, and gave the most honest answer of his career. For 20 years I fought for a lot of reasons. I fought for civil rights. I fought for my religion. I fought for money. I fought for glory. But tonight, I realized I was fighting for the wrong reasons. I was fighting to prove I was still Muhammad Ali, when the most important thing I could do as Muhammad Ali was be a good father. He looked down at Laila, who was listening intently. My daughter was crying because she was scared for me. And if my fighting scares the people I love most, then what's the point? What kind of man puts his own ego ahead of his child's peace of mind? The reporter pressed further. But Mohammed, you could have finished the fight. Berbick wasn't hurting you that badly. You could have made it to the final bell. Ali smiled sadly. Son, Trevor Berbick wasn't hurting me at all compared to seeing my little girl cry. When your child is in pain and you have the power to stop that pain, everything else becomes unimportant. Everything. The decision to retire wasn't officially announced until 3 days later. But everyone who was in Nassau that night knew they had witnessed the end of Muhammad Ali's boxing career. The man who had proclaimed himself the greatest had found something greater than boxing being a father. The reaction was mixed. Some fans and commentators criticized Ali for quitting, saying he had tarnished his legacy by not finishing the fight. Others understood that what they had witnessed wasn't a defeat, but perhaps Ali's greatest victory, choosing love over pride, family over fame. Angelo Dundee, who had been in Ali's corner for most of his career, supported the decision completely. I've seen Muhammad fight through broken jaws, fight when he couldn't see, fight when he had no business being in the ring. But I never saw him quit because he was scared or hurt. He quit because he was wise. He quit because he loved his daughter more than he loved boxing. That's not weakness, that's strength. Years later, when Laila Ali became a professional boxer herself and won multiple world championships, reporters would often ask her about that night in Nassau. Her answer never varied. That night, my father taught me the most important lesson of my life. He taught me that real strength isn't about never backing down. Real strength is knowing what's worth fighting for and what isn't. My father realized that his dignity, his health, his relationship with his children, those things were worth more than one more fight, one more victory, one more moment of glory. She would pause, smile, and add and when I became a fighter myself, I carried that lesson into every ring. I fought because I loved it, because it gave my life meaning, because I was good at it. But I always knew that the moment it stopped being about love and started being about ego, the moment it started hurting the people I cared about, I would walk away just like he did. The boxing world eventually came to understand that Ali's decision in Nassau wasn't a defeat. It was a masterclass in priorities. He had spent 20 years proving he was the greatest boxer who ever lived. In his final fight, he proved he was something even greater, a father who loved his child more than his own legend. Muhammad Ali's career statistics show 61 fights with 56 wins and 5 losses. But those numbers don't capture his most important victory, the night he chose to lose a fight in order to win at being a father. The tears that ended Muhammad Ali's boxing career weren't tears of defeat. They were tears of love, both his daughter's and his own. And sometimes love is the only victory that truly matters. In later interviews, Ali would say that walking away from boxing in Nassau was the easiest decision he ever made. When you see your child crying and you have the power to make those tears stop, there's no decision to make. You just do what love tells you to do. That's exactly what Muhammad Ali did on December 11, 1981. He followed his heart, protected his child, and showed the world that the greatest fighters know when to stop fighting.